The galaxy was wide and filled with countless stars and worlds, yet on this night, a shadow spread across the lanes of trade and travel, as whispers of something new began to move like a storm among the alien colonies, and fleets for something vast was coming from the far side of the Orion Arm, and the signals were clear and sharp and terrifying. Scouts from the Valorian Empire were the first to see it drifting slowly across the black ocean of space, a single object so large their scanners broke down trying to read its size and power. It was not like any ship they had ever seen before. No sharp wings, no fragile towers, no glowing weak engines, but instead a black shape shaped like a mountain, moving with silent purpose, and leaving no trail behind it. The alien officers gathered in their command deck and stared at the blurred image on the screen. One whispered, "It must be a rogue moon." Another said, "No, it is too perfect in shape." And the third one, with fear in his voice, said, "It is human." And at that word, silence fell over the room. Because even though humans were known across the stars, they were never counted as a strong. They were seen as young, loud, and reckless, a species with fire, but not with dominance. And yet here was a machine that told another story. The Valorian High Commander sent a coded message to the Alliance Council, reporting the sighting and requesting guidance. And while the message traveled, a massive object moved forward, ignoring all warnings, all attempt at communication, and even the threat of force. When small patrol ships dared to approach the object, they were struck blind, their systems died, and their engines froze until black shape passed and left them drifting powerless. Rumors began to grow faster than facts. Whole stations spoke of a ghost ship, whole fleets whispered of a silent giant. Some called it the Doom Ship, some called it the Death Star, though none dared to say its true name, for no one yet knew it was human-made. In the council chambers of the Zothri Confederation, alien leaders from many worlds sat in argument. Some demanded immediate war, some demanded patience, some demanded to hide and wait until more was known. But above the debate, the fear was clear for every race, every empire, every faction had seen ships of power before they had seen dreadnoughts and carriers and fortresses, yet nothing like this, nothing that moved without effort, nothing that bent sensors into static, nothing that radiated such cold. Silence. At the edge of the chamber, one young envoy whispered, "Maybe it is not a ship, maybe it is a living machine," and the words sent a chill through the room, though none wanted to admit that the thought might be true. Meanwhile, the object drifted closer to populated sectors, and this time the image was clear, and beyond doubt it was human in design, not alien, not machine from the past, but forged by the same species the Council had dismissed as weak and small for centuries, and that truth burned like fire in their pride. The object was no longer nameless. Now it was given a title whispered by frightened voices across the stars, the Earth Battleship. The Council tried to calm their people. They told them it was a bluff. They told them it was one ship only. They told them it could be defeated with enough fleets and enough firepower. But in their private chambers, they argued with fear and desperation. None knew the limits of this ship. None knew its purpose. None knew if it was even crewed or if it was a weapon that moved on its own. In the Valorian capital streets, filled with protests, some shouted for war, some shouted for surrender. Mothers hid their children. Workers abandoned the factories to watch the skies. Every screen, every channel spoke of the same story. The human battleship was moving, and no one could stop it. The aliens sent out their fastest interceptors armed with plasma lances and rail cannons, and nuclear fire. The fleet of 500 ships approached the black shape and unleashed their power in one single storm of light. And energy explosions brighter than suns filled the void, and for a moment they cheered, thinking the monster was gone. But when the light faded, the battleship still moved forward, untouched, its surface smooth, without a single scar, its shields or its skin, or its strange power absorbing everything without reply, and the interceptors fell silent, as one by one their engines died, their weapons failed, and their crews screamed in fear as they drifted helplessly. Across the galaxy, millions watched as the feed reached their stations and their homes. They saw the truth in silence. Earth had created something beyond their nightmares, and the galaxy trembled. The human battleship did not fire, it did not send threats, it did not even speak. It simply moved closer to the heart of the galactic powers. And the lack of action was worse than attack, for no one could read its intent, no one could know what it wanted. Alien leaders met again in hidden places. Some called for surrender to Earth. Some called for an alliance to strike first and destroy the ship before it reached their core worlds, but none had the courage to send their fleets again, for all had seen the failure of the first armada. And while the leaders argued, the people whispered in fear. And all they said, perhaps the humans were no longer the weak species they had mocked. Perhaps Earth had risen in silence, building something in shadows, waiting for this very day. In hidden rooms, spies spoke of more ships being built on the edge of human space, colossal dry docks hidden within asteroid belts. Rumors said this was not the only battleship, but the first of a line, the first of a fleet that would sweep across the stars. The galaxy that had laughed at humans now began to remember every insult, every attack, every colony stripped from Earth in the past, and they realized with terror that perhaps this ship was not just a weapon, it was revenge. The battleship passed through another sector, and every system it crossed when dark power drain lights failed cities silent, until it moved away, leaving nothing but fear behind, not destruction, not death, just silence. And silence was worse, for it told the galaxy that Earth could take everything without even firing a shot. In the homes of the Zothri Confederation, in the citadels of the Valorian Empire, in the fleets of the Euron Dominion, all hearts beat with the same terror, and the same question: why now? Why had Earth unleashed this monster? And what would they demand in return? And above all, the people asked a final question that none dared to voice in public, but whispered in private rooms: what if this was not the strongest human ship? What if there were more? The galaxy watched and waited as a human battleship moved slowly closer, its shadow growing larger and larger across every star map. And though no weapons had been fired, no threat spoken, no armies, land of the galaxy already felt conquered. For when Earth unleashed its battleship, the galaxy fell silent. The Galaxy Council had gathered once again inside the grand chamber built from crystal and steel, a place meant to display unity and pride, yet now it trembled with fear and anger as voices clashed in chaos, while the shadow of the Earth battleship moved closer and closer to the heart of their power. The leader of the Valorians slammed his clawed hand against the table, his voice sharp as thunder. He shouted that the humans had betrayed the peace, that their silence had been nothing more than a trap, that while the galaxy mocked them, they had been planning this moment in secret, and now the galaxy must unite or face doom. From the opposite side, a tall Zothri senator spoke with a calm and sly tone. He argued that humans were clever, but still small, that they could not have built such a ship. Without help, he suggested there must be traitors among the Council allies who aided Earth in the dark, and he demanded an investigation before any rash strike against the humans. The chamber erupted with more shouting. Some demanded immediate war, some demanded diplomacy. Some demanded to prepare their fleets in secret, while pretending to negotiate for the galaxy was not one empire, but many races, each with its pride, each with its fears, and none trusted the other fully. Above them, the giant screens displayed the same image again. And again the battleship, gliding through space, its black hull shining faintly with unknown energy, its silence louder than any threat. And as the leaders argued, they all knew that no matter what was said, none of their fleets had been able to scratch its armor, none of their weapons had even slowed it down. In the lower ranks of the chamber, the young envoys and aides whispered among themselves. Some asked what if Earth had made a pact with ancient power. Some asked what if the humans had uncovered lost technology buried under their oceans or their moons. Some whispered even darker thoughts: what if humans were no longer only human? While leaders argued and envoys whispered, the battleship moved past the border of the Euron Dominion. The Eurons, proud and warlike, had always mocked humanity in the past. They had raided colonies, they had enslaved human workers, they had laughed at Earth's weakness. But now their grand fleet of 2,000 ships stood in silence as the black giant passed by. They fired no shot. They dared not, for memory of the first failed armada was too fresh, and their admirals had no desire to be remembered as fools. But even without battle, the Euron worlds trembled as the ship passed. Every sensor blinded, every city darkened, every shield failed for hours, leaving their people helpless like children before a storm. The battleship did not speak, did not strike, did not take, yet it left behind humiliation and terror deeper than fire. In the chamber, news of the silent invasion arrived, and the leaders who had called for war fell into uneasy silence, for the proud Eurons dared not fight. Then who among them would have the courage, who would risk being the next to fall blind before the monster of Earth? Meanwhile, deep within the hidden vault of the council, a secret meeting was held. Only the highest-kept lords and queens and generals allowed. They sat in darkness, away from public eyes. And they spoke of things not meant for common ears. They spoke of the long history of humanity, a history they had hidden and altered for centuries. For the truth was darker than most races knew long ago. Before humans had reached the stars, they had already been seen by the Watcher's alien scouts, who looked upon Earth with interest. They had seen the wars of unity, the fire, resilience. They had seen the strange way humans could adapt to any world, any weapon, any enemy. And in fear they had agreed to keep Earth small, to block their rise, to strangle their colonies with laws and blockades, to rob their resources and mock their pride until they became nothing more than servants. But now it seemed their plan had failed, for in silence and Shadow's Earth had built something beyond anything the Council could imagine, and that meant humanity had not been broken. Humanity had been patient, waiting for the right moment to reveal its hand. The hidden Council argued bitterly. Some said they should admit their crimes and beg for mercy. Some said they should strike before more ships appeared. Some said it was already too late, for if humans had built one battleship, then they could build 1,000 and no force could stop them. Outside the chamber, across the galaxy, the people whispered and feared. Markets collapsed, armies refused order, cities prepared shelters, though no attack had come. The fear was enough to tear whole empires apart. And in many hearts, one question grew: what did Earth want? Why was this ship moving toward the core worlds? Back on Earth, far from the frightened galaxy, the truth was guarded with iron silence. The ship had been named the Aegis Eternal, built inside a hollowed moon, hidden for decades, powered by secrets no alien I had ever seen. Its design born not only from science, but from human determination, forged in the rage of generations who had been mocked and enslaved by alien hands. Within its hull, soldiers walked in silence. Disciplined and strong engineers kept the engines humming. Without words, officers stood at command stations waiting for orders that had not yet been spoken, and at the heart of the ship, a single figure watched the galaxy with cold eyes, the Admiral chosen by Earth, not for mercy, not for politics, but for strength. The Admiral knew the galaxy trembled, knew the Council argued, knew the people whispered, yet he did not rush, he did not boast, he allowed fear grow like a shadow, for fear was a weapon as sharp as any cannon. And when time came, the galaxy would already be broken inside before the first shot was fired. The Admiral turned to his officers and gave a single command: continue forward toward the Council world. And so the battleship moved without hurry, without pause, its shadow falling across stars and worlds like the wings of doom. Back in the Council chamber, the leaders finally agreed on one thing. They would send an envoy, a group of chosen ambassadors, to meet the humans, to learn their demand before the galaxy collapsed into panic. Yet none wished to be the envoy, none wished to step first into the jaws of the beast. At last the Valorians were forced to accept the task, their pride too great to show fear. They prepared their finest ship with silken banners and golden armor, and they set out to meet the Aegis Eternal. The galaxy held its breath as the two ships faced each other, one bright with jewels and ceremony, the other dark and silent like a mountain drifting through the night. And as the alien envoy prepared to speak across the channel, no reply came, only silence stretching longer and heavier, until the envoy captain began to tremble, for silence from humans was more terrible than words, and every eye across the galaxy watched as the scene unfolded, waiting for the first moment of contact, waiting to see if Earth had come as conqueror or as judge. The silence grew like a storm, and the galaxy felt its heartbeat slow, for they knew that whatever words came next would decide the fate of every world. For when Earth unleashed its battleship, silence was never empty, it was a warning. The Valorian envoy ship floated before the black giant, its golden armor shining bright against the endless night, banners of honor waving on it, hull symbols of ancient pride glowing across its surface. For the Valorians believed appearances showed power, and they hoped to mask their fear with glitter and gold. But before the Aegis Eternal, their pride seemed small, like candles before a storm. Inside the envoy chamber, the captain of the Valorian stood tall, his horns polished, his voice steady, though his hands trembled. He activated the channel. His words carried with forced courage. He declared himself servant to Council. He offered greetings in the name of peace. He demanded to know the purpose of the human ship, and whether Earth came to negotiate or to threaten. The channel echoed with silence. There was no reply, no voice, no sound, only the faint hum of static, and the shadow of the battleship looming larger and heavier, as if its silence itself pressed against the hearts of those who waited. The Valorian officers exchanged nervous glances. Some whispered that the humans might not even hear them. Some whispered that the humans ignored them on purpose. Some whispered that the humans wished to show them what it felt like to be mocked, to speak into emptiness, as others once had done to Earth. But the captain silenced his crew and waited. Minutes became hours. The envoy floated powerless in front of the black wall of metal. No weapon aimed, no signal sent, no gesture made, only silence heavier than chains. The captain felt sweat drip beneath his armor, his pride cracking for the galaxy, watched through countless transmissions, and he knew that if he faltered, the Valorian pride would be broken forever. Then, without warning, the battleship stirred. Its hull glowed with strange patterns, lines of blue light running like rivers across its armor, engines humming with a low roar that shook even distant senses of Valorian crews staggered as their systems flickered screens when dark shields shut down weapons, turned useless, every device dying at once, leaving them blind before the silent beast. And then a single image appeared on their screens, not words, not sound, but image the face of a human soldier, scarred and stern eyes cold as stone. Behind him stood ranks of armored warriors, each face unbroken, each gaze sharp like blades. A message was clear, though no words were spoken. Humanity was no longer the weak child mocked by others. Humanity was a power that stood unshaken while others trembled. The image vanished, silence returned, and the systems of the Valorian envoys slowly came back to life one by one. The crew stared in horror, for what they had seen was worse than threats. It was a warning that humans did not need to speak to make the galaxy obey. The captain ordered retreat, though his pride bled. He commanded his ship to fall back to the council world and carried a message, for he knew if they delayed too long, the battleship might choose to erase them entirely, and pride was not worth the lives of his crew. As the envoy ship pulled away, the Aegis Eternal did not pursue, did not strike. It simply continued forward, steady as a mountain drifting to the stars, unhurried, unshaken, and unstoppable. The council chamber received the report, and the image spread like fire across the galaxy. People in markets, people in homes, soldiers in barracks, rulers in palaces, all saw the scarred human face and the silent ranks behind him, and all felt the same chill. Humans had not only built a ship, they had built unity, something no other race had ever mastered. For most empires were divided by greed or fear, but humanity now moved as one. The council fell into deeper panic. Some leaders screamed for war, others screamed for surrender, some screamed for hiding in the outer rims. Yet no answer satisfied, for no strategy seemed enough before such quiet power. Whispers rose in the shadows that perhaps the galaxy had misunderstood humans from the beginning, that perhaps the endless wars of Earth had forged not weakness, but strength, that perhaps the scars of their past had given them the will to endure what no other race could endure, and now that will become a weapon more terrible than fleets. Among the people of smaller worlds, voices grew louder. They questioned why the council had mocked humans, why they had enslaved them, why they had blocked their colonies and stolen their resources. Many began to see humans not only as threat, but as justice, as vengeance against the arrogance of the great powers, and some secretly cheered the sight of the battleship, hoping it will humble their rulers. Inside the Aegis Eternal, the admiral stood before the command deck, silent. As the soldiers, the officers waited without speaking, for orders were given rarely, and with precision the admiral raised his hand, and new commands moved across the ship. Shields adjusted, cannons charged, systems locked on hidden targets across distant stars. The crew obeyed without question, for they knew their mission, though not spoken, was clear. In the lower decks, young soldiers trained in silence, moving like shadows through long halls, their steps echoing only faintly, discipline carved into every gesture, their faces hard yet calm, for each of them carried the memory of Earth's humiliation, carried the pain of ancestors mocked by alien masters, carried the fire of vengeance, not as rage, but as duty. And in the heart of the ship, hidden deep in its core, glowed the secret that powered it, not mere engines, not mere science, but something older, something the galaxy had forgotten, a relic of ancient war found in ruins long buried on Earth, a core of living energy bound to human, with its origin unknown, its strength unmatched. And it beat like a second heart for the ship itself, as if Earth had given birth to a machine of destiny. The admiral placed his hand on the command console, eyes fixed on the distant path toward the council world. He knew the galaxy was already broken inside, fear spreading faster than fire. He knew silence was their greatest weapon, for it forced enemies to imagine horrors greater than reality. He knew that when the moment came, the galaxy would kneel not only to Earth's weapons, but to Earth's will. Back in the council chambers, a Valorian captain delivered his report, his voice shaking, his pride shattered. He described the silence, the shutdown of systems, the scarred face, the soldier behind him, and the council sat frozen. No word spoken, no lies strong enough to cover the truth. And across the galaxy, one truth grew heavy in every heart. Earth was no longer asking, Earth was no longer begging, Earth was no longer mocked. Earth had returned with power that none could deny. And still the Aegis Eternal moved forward, silent, steady, inevitable toward the council world, where the final judgment waited. The Aegis Eternal drifted through the dark sea of stars, silent as ever, its black armor swallowing the light, its great cannons asleep. But waiting, every ship that saw from afar felt the weight of its shadow. Even before knowing its name, whispers moved across trade routes, across colonies, across fleets. And soon the whole galaxy spoke of the silent monster from Earth. Inside the council world, panic had become a storm. Leaders argued night and day, voices rising in endless fury. Some demanded that fleet should be sent at once to destroy the battleship before it reached their gates. Others begged for peace talks, fearing total ruin, while a few demanded silence, believing any move against Earth would make them the next target of wrath. But none of them found an answer that could ease their fear. The Valorian envoy, who had faced a ship in person, stood before the council, Once more his horns lowered, his voice shaking, as he told them again of the silence of the systems, shutting down of the scarred human face of the soldiers behind him, and he declared that Earth no longer sought words, that Earth had already delivered its message, and it was not a message of peace, but of power. The council chamber filled with roaring voices again as leaders from countless races hurled blame against one another. Some shouted that the Dravens had been too cruel in their slave raids against humans. Others said the Syrinx merchants had robbed Earth too greedily. Some cried that the Valorians themselves had mocked the humans most of all, yet none wished to accept fault, and all feared that the judgment of Earth would fall upon them next. Meanwhile, in the outer worlds, the common people spoke in whispers different from the rulers, their voices filled with strange hope, for many small colonies crushed under the weight of council law dreamed of freedom, and when they saw the human ship rising above all fleets, they whispered that maybe the humans carried not only vengeance, but also change. They whispered that perhaps the storm from Earth might break the chains that bound them. Inside the Aegis Eternal, the crew remained silent at their stations. The admiral stood tall, his face carved of stone, his eyes fixed on the endless black. His officers watched him with trust, for he was a symbol of their resolve. He spoke few words, but every order was sharp like a blade, and no one questioned him, for they all carried the same fire, the fire that had been lit long ago when Earth was humiliated before alien masters. Deep within the ship, the core pulsed with bright energy, alive and strange, its power humming through every wall, its light touching every chamber. As if the ship itself breathed, each pulse matched the rhythm of the crew. Each soldier, feeling its silent beat within their chest, the ship was more than steel, more than engines. It was a living will of humanity, bound in unity, something no alien race could claim. On the council world fleets were prepared great armadas of ships, lined the skies, their engines burning bright, weapons charged, shields raised, yet the admirals of those fleets carried no true courage, for their hearts were heavy with fear. They had seen the image, they had heard the stories, they had felt the silence in their dreams, and though their weapons glowed with deadly fire, their spirits trembled before the shadow of the coming storm. In hidden chambers, spies and agents of smaller races whispered among themselves. They sent secret messages to human sympathizers. They promised loyalty if Earth would grant them protection. They begged for favor before the battleship arrived. And these whispers spread like roots under the soil, unseen yet growing strong. The admiral of the Aegis Eternal stood at the command deck, his voice finally breaking the silence. He ordered a shift in course. The ship turned slowly toward the heart of the council world, its engines humming low, yet deep like the growl of a beast preparing to strike. The crew moved without hesitation, every hand steady, every eye sharp, for they knew the time of shadows was ending and the time of action had come. Across the galaxy, screens, lit-up transmissions carried images of the black giant. Moving closer, panic rose higher than ever. Some leaders fled their palaces into hidden fortresses. Some generals abandoned their posts to protect their own bloodline. Some merchants tried to escape into the void, carrying their riches. But no matter how far they ran, the shadow of the battleship seemed to follow, for its presence was not bound by distance, it was bound by fear. On the council world, the rulers gathered in one final desperate meeting, the chamber filled with shouting horns, claws, wings, and voices of every kind. Yet above them all rang the words of the Valorian envoy. He declared that resistance was hopeless. He begged them to bow before Earth, to show submission before the storm destroyed them. But others screamed back that surrender was worse than death, that the galaxy must unite and fight together. But still no agreement came, only endless division. And while they argued, the Aegis Eternal crossed into their system its black armor, reflecting the light of their suns, its weapons now awakening, glowing with lines of fire, its shadow falling across their fleets, which now stood trembling in formation, ready, but not ready. The first shot never came from Earth. The first shot came from the council fleets, desperate to show courage. Their cannons lit the sky, beams of fire crashing against the black giant, yet the energy vanished like smoke against water shields, unseen, absorbing every strike. As if they were nothing, the galaxy watched in horror as their greatest weapons proved useless, their bravest efforts swallowed like whispers in a storm. The Aegis Eternal answered not with full fire, but was silent again. It released only a wave of strange energy that raced across the fleets in a flash. Every system died, weapons shut down, engines fell, dark shields collapsed, crews gasped in despair as their ships drifted powerless before the giant, their lights flickering out across the sky like candles before the wind. Then a second image appeared across every screen, every fleet, every council chamber, every home across the stars. It was again the scarred human face, the soldier, who spoke no word, yet behind him now stood not only ranks of warriors, but the burning symbol of Earth itself, rising like flame behind their shoulders. A message was clear: surrender or be erased. The galaxy fell silent, fleets, powerless rulers frozen, people holding their breath across thousands of worlds, and in that silence the truth became clear: the age of mocking humans was the age of fearing them had begun. And the Aegis Eternal continued forward, steady, unbroken, like fate itself, moving closer to the Council world where the storm would finally break. The Aegis Eternal hovered at the edge of the Council world system, its black surface, swallowing the starlight, its glowing lines of energy pulsing like the heartbeat of a beast ready to strike across the fleets of the Council ships. Drifted powerless, their weapons cold, their engines dead, their crews stare in despair through wide glass windows, watching the giant advance, while their own vessels floated like broken toys in the tide. The galaxy held its breath as messages spread across every channel. Worlds far away saw the images of the fallen fleets, and the silent human ship. Every corner of space echoed with whispers of doomed children in colonies clung to their parents, asking if the humans would come for them next. Miners deep in asteroid belts laid down their tools, and prayed traders on distant routes shut down their ships and stared at the stars, waiting for shadow to appear before them. The silence stretched across countless worlds like a veil of fear. Inside the council chamber, rulers of the great races trembled, their voices rising in chaos, yet filled with no power. Some demanded surrender, begging to send tribute and plea. Others demanded resistance, screaming that the galaxy must unite and crush Earth before it was too late. But none of their words carried strength, for the fleets outside already lay dead. Their weapons had spoken and failed, and now their leaders could only argue while terror crawled in their hearts. The Valorian envoy rose, his voice low but heavy. He declared that Earth had already won the battle. Without firing a single true shot, he warned that further defiance would bring not only defeat, but extinction. He begged the Council to face reality. Yet even as he spoke, the Draven warlord slammed his claw against the table, his eyes burning with rage. He shouted that his people would never bow, that they would rise again, even if it cost them everything. His cry rang through the chamber, yet few answered, if her courage had already fled. Meanwhile, on the Aegis Eternal, the crew stood at their post, silent as stone, their eyes never leaving their screens, their hands steady. As they obeyed every command, the Admiral stood at the center, his gaze fixed on the glowing sphere of the Council world, his voice calm as he ordered the ship to continue forward. The crew responded in unison, for there was one bound not by fear, but by the memory of chains broken and humiliation avenged. The ship pulsed with energy brighter now than before, the strange core deep inside humming with power that no alien mind could understand. It was not only a machine, it was a spirit of Earth forged in secret under the shadows of oppression, now burning bright in the open sky. Each wave of its power ran through the crew like blood through veins, making them feel not only part of the ship, but part of something greater than themselves. As the Aegis Eternal advanced, transmissions erupted across the Council world. Military commanders screamed orders demanding their defense platforms fire every weapon, yet as the cannons blazed, their beams of light struck against the black giant and vanished again, swallowed. Without trace, the skies of the Council world burned with light, yet none of it harmed the advancing shadow. Panic rose across the surface. Citizens flooded into shelters. Voices filled the streets, wings, claws, and hands reaching for safety. Yet none could escape the feeling that no shelter was deep enough, no wall strong enough to stop what was coming. They looked to the skies and saw the black ship growing larger, like an eclipse swallowing their sun. Back inside the chamber, the rulers argued still until the screens before them lit. Once more the scar human face appeared again, his single eye burning with cold fire. Behind him, the ranks of human soldiers stood silent, their armor gleaming, their weapons at the ready. Behind them, the symbol of Earth glowed brighter than ever, filling the chamber with its light. Though it was only an image, the rulers felt as if the weight of that symbol pressed down upon their very souls. The soldier spoke no words, but his silence carried meaning heavier than any speech. His scar told of pain, his eye told of fury, his stance told of unbroken resolve. The rulers shrank before him, unable to meet his gaze, unable to answer the unspoken question: surrender or perish. The Valorian envoy fell to his knees before the screen, his voice shaking as he swore loyalty to Earth. His words echoed through the chamber, shocking the others, yet also breaking their resistance. One by one, rulers lowered their heads, fear swallowing pride. Some still shouted in anger, but their voices rang hollow compared to the silence of the scarred soldier. On the surface of the Council world, crowds gathered in open squares to watch the sky, their leaders hidden in chambers. But the people stood beneath the shadow of the ship. They expected fire, they expected death. Yet no fire came. Instead, the ship hovered above them, silent, its power radiating. Without release, the people felt something shift deep inside them. They saw not only terror, but also strength that their own rulers had never shown, strength that no alien empire had ever granted them. In secret corners, whispers grew louder. Rebels, long crushed by council fleets, began to rise, their hope born from the sight of the human ship. They spread messages across the world declaring that Earth had come not only to punish, but to bring change, to break the chains of the great council, to shatter the order that had ruled for ages. Their whispers moved fast, carried by the fear of rulers and the courage of the desperate. The admiral of the Aegis Eternal stood silent, watching the world below. His officers waited for orders, his crew steady at their posts. Finally, he raised his hand and commanded the ship to release a signal. Beams of light shot out from the ship, not weapons, but messages carried across every channel into every city, every home, every vessel, the symbol of Earth blazing bright, followed by the same scarred face of the soldier staring, without words, into every soul across the world, across the galaxy. The meaning was clear. Earth demanded submission. Earth demanded respect. Earth demanded that the age of humiliation end now and forever, and those who stood against it would fall into the void with nothing left but ashes. The council world fell silent, its rulers broken, its fleets powerless, its people trembling, and waiting for what would come next. The black ship lingered above, like judgment itself, unshaken, unmovable, inevitable. And across the stars and countless worlds the same thought grew in every heart. The humans had risen, the humans had become the storm, the humans had unleashed a power that no one could stop, and the galaxy now waited to see if they would show mercy or if the fire would finally fall. The Aegis Eternal remained above the council world, its dark hull stretching across the sky like the shadow of judgment, and below fear spread like fire across the people. Some hid in caves and shelters, some knelt in streets praying for mercy, and others raised their fists in secret, whispering that maybe this was the end of their ruler's reign and the start of something new for all across the world. The symbol of Earth glowed on every screen, every tower, and every broken ship. In the great chamber, the rulers of the council sat silent, sweat dripping from their skin and scales and feathers, as the scarred soldiers stared at them through the giant screen behind him. The soldiers of Earth stood in perfect formation, their armor shining like steel forged in fire, their weapons gleaming with silent promise. The soldier lifted his hand slowly, and every heart in the chamber froze as they waited for his voice. When the human spoke, his words were sharp and heavy, each one striking like thunder. He declared that the time of humiliation was over. He reminded them of the years when Earth was crushed under alien boots, when human voices were ignored in the council, when their fleets were forced into exile and their soldiers treated like slaves. He told them that age was gone forever, and any who dared to repeat it would see their world burned to dust. The rulers tried to speak, but their words failed, their tongues heavy with fear. Only the Valorian envoy rose again, bowing low and declaring his loyalty. Once more, he begged the soldier to spare his people and allow them to serve in peace. The Draven warlord growled with rage, his claws tearing into the table, but even he could not stand against the silent weight pressing on the chamber. The demands of Earth were simple yet vast. The soldiers spoke them one by one, each word sinking into the hearts of the rulers. First, the council was dissolved. Never again would a handful of races decide the fate of the galaxy. Second, the fleets of the empires were to be broken, their weapons melted, their factories given to Earth. Third, the people of every world were to be given freedom, no chains, no slaves, no forced service to lords and rulers. Fourth, Earth demanded tribute not of wealth, but of respect. Every world was to recognize Earth as equal, not as servant, not as prey. The chamber erupted with cries. Some rulers screamed that the demands were impossible. Others shouted that such demands meant the end of their power. But their cries were hollow, for outside their fleets already lay broken, and their people already saw the truth in the sky above. The Aegis Eternal still hovered, waiting, silent yet alive with power. The Draven warlord roared. His people would never bow, that they would rather die fighting. Yet even as he roared, the soldier raised his hand again, and the screen changed to show the image of the Draven fleet floating in pieces shattered by Earth weapons months ago, unknown to the galaxy. The warlord froze his roar, dying in his throat, as the truth stabbed him like a blade. Earth had already defeated them in secret battles. Earth had already crushed his fleets before the council even gathered. Across the galaxy, those who watched from distant stars felt the ground beneath their feet shift, for they saw that Earth was not only powerful, but also patient, silent, and waiting until the moment was right. They realized that while the empires had laughed at humanity had been building in the shadows, creating weapons and ships unlike any other, preparing for the day when their chains would break. The people of the council world began to rise, their whispers turning into voices, calling for change, calling for freedom, no longer afraid of their rulers, now that the human ship hung above them, no longer afraid of the fleets now shattered and burning. Their voices echoed through streets and squares until the sound became a wave that shook the ground itself. The admiral of the Aegis Eternal listened to reports from across the planet. His officers, speaking of riots of rulers, losing control of prisoners, freed of banners of earth painted on walls by alien hands, the admiral nodded in silence, his eyes fixed on the world below. He gave one order: hold position. Let the people see, let them choose their side. Let them decide who they would follow. The scarred soldier remained on the screen, his gaze fixed on the rulers who now sat slumped in defeat. Some wept, others cursed and begged, but all knew the truth: their time was ending, their power crumbling not only by Earth, but by their own people. The soldier told them the galaxy had lived too long under chains. It was time for fire to burn those chains away. Then for the first time he smiled, but it was not a smile of kindness. It was a smile of victory, hard, sharp, unyielding. It was a smile of a man who had carried pain and turned into power. The rulers shivered at that smile, for they saw in it not only the rage of a soldier, but the will of an entire world standing behind him. Across distant systems, fleets that once feared nothing now trembled. News of the demand spread faster than light. Smugglers carried tales, miners whispered songs of rebellion, children played games pretending to be human soldiers. Farmers in quiet fields looked up at the stars with new hope. Everywhere the galaxy stirred, restless, like a storm waiting to break. The Valorian envoy left the chamber and returned to his people, at once broadcasting the message that his world would stand with Earth. Others hesitated, still clinging to pride, yet one by one they felt their grips slipping, for their people no longer obeyed their orders. Their people had seen the black ship, the scarred soldier, the glowing symbol of Earth, and they had found new strength in that vision. The Draven warlord tried to rally his followers, but even among his kind, whispers of doubt spread. His soldiers remembered battles lost, his commanders recalled fleets destroyed, and even his people began to wonder if the age of their claws was finally ending. Some of them began to speak quietly of serving Earth instead of dying in fire. As the hours passed, the council world shifted from a place of fear to a place of uprising. The people poured into the streets not to fight Earth, but to fight their own rulers. They chanted in unison, voices rising like thunder, echoing the words of the scarred soldier: freedom, respect, equality. And Earth, the black ship above, did not fire a single weapon, yet its shadow was stronger than any blade. The admiral of the Aegis Eternal stood on the command deck, listening to the growing chorus across the galaxy. He knew the war was not over. He knew many would resist. He knew blood would still fall, but he also knew the tide had turned for the first time in history. Humanity was not the hunted, humanity was a storm, and the galaxy now bent beneath that storm. And in that silence, heavy and vast, a single truth spread across every world: Earth had demanded respect, and the galaxy would never again forget the power of humankind. The galaxy held its breath as a black ship known as the Aegis Eternal remained above the council world, its massive hull casting a shadow across continents and oceans, while billions of eyes stare up in silence and fear. The people below could feel the weight of judgment pressing on them, and far across the stars, in hidden colonies and quiet homes, countless others whispered prayers or cried out in defiance, but all were waiting for the choice of Earth, the choice that would decide the future of every race. Inside the great chamber, the rulers of the council lay broken by fear, their voices weak, their bodies trembling. They had no more armies, no more fleets, no more power. Their people had risen against them, and their enemies had grown stronger by the hour. The scarred human soldier stood tall on the screen above them, his eyes sharp as fire, his armor bearing the scars of countless battles. Behind him, rows of human soldiers remained silent, their discipline unshaken like stone carved by storms. The human soldier raised his hand once more, and the voices of the rulers died into silence. He began to speak, and his voice was carried not only into the chamber, but across every world, every ship, every settlement, through waves of light and sound. His words reached miners in the cold dark of asteroids, traders on lonely routes, children hiding in shelters, soldiers staring at broken weapons, farmers looking at the stars. He told them the age of chains was finished. He told them the galaxy was no longer the realm of empires that ruled with cruelty and greed, but the realm of free peoples who would stand together or fall together. His voice declared that Earth did not come to enslave nor destroy, but to demand respect and justice. His words struck deep, for all knew the truth of Earth's pain, the centuries of humiliation, the long years of mockery, the battles fought without allies, the chains carried by their soldiers, and now they saw those chains shattered forever by courage and fire. But he also warned that any who rose again to place chains upon others would meet the fire of Earth without mercy. He promised that no tyrant would hide behind fleets, no warlord would hide behind thrones, no council would decide the fate of the weak ever again, for Earth had risen not only for itself, but for every world that longed for freedom. The chamber shook as the people outside began to roar, their voices rising in waves, chanting the words freedom. And Earth their chants spread across cities, across continents. The rulers, slumped lower, knowing their time had ended. The Valorian envoys stood proud, declaring once more that his people would stand with Earth. The Draven warlord sat silent, his claws trembling rage and shame fighting his eyes. But even he knew the truth: the galaxy had changed. The admiral of the Aegis Eternal stood on the command deck, his officers reporting that uprisings had begun across a dozen systems, that fleets once loyal to the Council had surrendered, that banners of Earth were being painted on alien ships. He gave no order of attack, only silence, letting the will of the galaxy itself rise without fire. Yet the galaxy still trembled, waiting for the final word, for the ultimate choice of Earth. Would Earth crush the Council worlds into ash, or would Earth spare them and let a new age begin? All eyes turned to the scarred soldier as he paused, his gaze hard and unyielding before the fallen rulers. He declared that judgment had been passed. The Council was dissolved, its rule ended forever, its members stripped of power, their worlds freed to govern themselves under the new order of equality. He declared that the Aegis Eternal will remain in orbit, not as a conqueror, but as a guardian watching to ensure the old chains never returned. His words echoed across the chamber, filling it with a sense of finality, like the last stone placed on a grave. The rulers begged for mercy, some wept, others cursed, some swore loyalty. But their cries meant nothing, for their people had already turned against them, and their people now looked to Earth with hope, not fear. The soldier turned his gaze from the rulers to the stars beyond, speaking to the galaxy itself, telling them that humanity had no desire to sit on thrones, nor to wear crowns. That humanity wanted only respect and peace, but peace built on strength, not weakness, peace built on honor, not fear. Across countless systems the words were heard, and they burned into memory. Children repeated them to one another, elders whispered them with tears, warriors engraved them onto weapons, for all knew they were not merely words, they were the vow of Earth. In the streets of the Council world, banners of rebellion waved, voices rose like thunder, and the people marched, no longer slaves, no longer subjects of distant rulers. A shadow of the Aegis Eternal gave them courage like a shield above them, and they shouted their freedom into the sky. The Valorians began to work with the humans, openly sending signals of alliance ships loaded with supplies and promises of aid. The Dravens were divided. Some swore they would fight to the last breath, but others chose to bend and follow, for even among their kind the memory of crushed fleets and broken warlords had seeded doubt, and many now wondered if it was wiser to serve beside Earth than to die before it. The admiral looked across the bridge of the ship, and he saw officers from Earth and from alien worlds already standing together, sharing reports and planning for the storms that would come. He knew this was only the beginning, for other empires far away would resist, and wars would still rage. But now the galaxy had seen Earth's strength, and no one would ever again call humanity weak. The scarred soldier finally stepped back, his message finished, his eyes closed for a moment, as if he felt the weight of centuries lifting from his shoulders. When he opened them again, the chamber was silent, except the chants from outside. The rulers sat defeated. The galaxy itself seemed to bow, and for the first time in ages he allowed himself a small breath of peace. The Aegis Eternal remained above the world, its black hull unbroken, its engine silent. Yet alive with power, it stood as a promise that Earth would never again be mocked, never again be chained, never again be silenced. And across the stars the galaxy knew the truth: humanity had risen not as a servant, not as prey, not as a whisper lost in the dark, but as a storm, and the storm had spoken, and the storm had brought judgment. And from that day forward the galaxy would remember forever the day Earth unleashed its battleship, and the galaxy fell silent.